The 18-year-old Eastern Michigan University freshman disappeared from Ypsilanti's Main Street around 1 p.m. on Wednesday.
Gives a cause of death as a result of a severe blow to the head.
Here to Forest Hill Cemetery near the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, an almost frantic search for the girl's killer goes on.
At first it was college girls being victimized, but when he took a little kid.
Most of the girls were sliced, their breasts were sliced, throat was sliced.
We live off campus and we're in a house with 10 girls alone, and it's sort of scary at night.
A story that took place a little more than 50 years ago today. It was a time of peace and love. It was also a time before Charles Manson, before Ted Bundy, before the word serial killer was even a term. Yet it happened here, just outside of Detroit, where tens of thousands of students walk the same campuses today and travel the same back roads, where a killer dumped victim after victim after victim.
University officials, both here and at the University of Michigan, say that they really can't provide maximum protection for the girls.
And we are doing everything humanly possible to try to apprehend this killer or killers.
He was just kind of following me home, you know. I said, no, really, I'm okay.
And he said, "You mother ugly aren't you gonna get in the car with me?"
The Michigan Murders was a series of highly publicized killings of young women committed between 1967 and 1969 in the Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area of southeastern Michigan by an individual known as the Ypsilanti Ripper, the Michigan Murderer, and the co-ed killer. It was a hot July day in Ypsilanti when 19-year-old accounting student Mary Fleischer went out for an evening walk near the Eastern Michigan University campus. She told her roommate that she needed to get a bit of fresh air due to the summer heat. Fleischer was studying accounting at EMU and was working as a secretary. She was also a devout Catholic girl. An elderly neighbor who always sees Mary walking twice observed a young man in a blue-gray Chevy slow to a halt beside Fleischer and began talking to her. Each time Mary had shaken her head and walked away from the car. It is still unclear how, but the young man was eventually able to lure Mary into his car. not realizing this mistake would cost her her life. A little over a month had gone by since she was last seen alive on July 9th. Her nude, decomposing body was discovered by two 15-year-old boys at an abandoned farm in Superior Township on August 7th, and was identified by dental records the following day. The corpse was badly decomposed, although the pathologist who examined Flesher's remains was able to determine that she had been stabbed approximately 30 times in the chest and abdomen region with a knife or other sharp object, that her feet had been severed just above the ankle, the thumb and sections of the fingers of one hand were missing, and that one forearm had been severed from her body. These severed appendages were never found. Despite the advanced state of decomposition, the pathologist was also able to locate multiple lineal abrasions upon the victim's chest and torso, indicating that Flesher had been extensively beaten before her death. Although police theorized that Flesher had been raped, the decomposition of the corpse had erased any conclusive evidence of sexual assault. A detailed examination of the crime scene revealed that the body had been moved 3 times throughout the month it had laid undiscovered. Initially, the body had laid upon a pile of bottles and cans, obscured from view by elder trees, before being dragged 5 feet from this location into a field, where it had remained exposed throughout much of the time it laid there undiscovered. Shortly before the body was discovered, the murderer had again returned to the body, which he had moved a further 3 feet. 2 days after the remains had been identified as those of Mary Flesher, a young man claiming to be a friend of the Flesher family arrived at the funeral home holding Mary Flesher's body prior to her scheduled burial. This individual had asked for permission to take a photograph of the body as it lay in the coffin as a keepsake for her parents. When informed his request was impossible, the young man had replied, "You mean you can't fix her up enough so I can get one picture of her?" Sternly informed a second time that he would not be allowed to view the body, the young man had wordlessly exited the funeral home. The receptionist couldn't offer any clear description of the man, beyond that he was a handsome young white male with dark hair, and that he had driven a blue-gray Chevrolet. Then on a hot Sunday night a year later, 20-year-old Joan Shell left her house on Emmett Street in Ypsilanti and walked a block to a bus stop on Washtenaw Avenue.
This is where Joan Shell was last seen. She was hitchhiking to Ann Arbor after missing a bus. Her friends saw her get into a car with 3 young men. Joan Shell was never seen again.
Her body was found a few days later off Earhart Road in Ann Arbor. Joan Shell had 25 stab wounds when she was found in what's now somebody's backyard.
My parents keep calling me every night to make sure it's not me.
In March of 1969, Marilyn Skelton was a rock and roll party girl. Her brother dropped her off at the Arborland Mall. She wanted to get to her boyfriend's crash pad in Ypsi. He was a drummer in this man's band. His name is Ed.
She had called me from Arborland Shopping Center out on Washtenaw and looking for a ride over to our place. I didn't have a car. I said, "Sorry, Marilyn, I can't come and get you."
So you may have been the last person that ever spoke with her.
Very possible.
She was the most brutally murdered, and he did really unspeakable things to her.
Washtenaw County Sheriff at the time, Doug Harvey, explains.
He would always shove something up their vagina.
Marilyn Skelton was found with a large tree branch violating her 16-year-old body. But the worst was yet to come.
13-year-old Dawn Basin was last seen walking along these railroad tracks, taking a shortcut home. She never made it.
Dawn was a normal 13-year-old child, lived in this white frame home.
Dawn Bazem was only a few hundred yards from her home when she vanished in April of 1969. 50 years later, her neighbor and horse riding buddy, Kay, still remembers her.
She was tough. She was generous and sweet.
The morning after the sweet girl was missing, Sheriff Harvey was here on Vreeland and Gale Roads, where her body was found dumped. He remembers the terrible sight when he looked under that sheet.
Here was a young little girl. It tore us apart, seriously. It had effect on us, on every officer who's seen this.
I went to the funeral home and Dawn's mother asked me to sit next to her.
Dawn's funeral was a heart-wrenching affair, captured by WJBK film crews.
Here to Forest Hill Cemetery near the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, an almost frantic search for the girl's killer goes on.
At first it was college girls being victimized, but when he took a little kid.
Like the first 3 victims, Dawn had been murdered somewhere other than where her body was found. Washtenaw deputies searched the handful of miles of the abduction site and where her body was found, and found her orange sweater and the signs of a deadly struggle between Dawn and her killer.
He took her to that abandoned house out on LaForge Road. She was in the basement of that house. And they found glass in her elbows and knees. She had gotten out of there and got across the yard to the back toward the barn, and that's where she was attacked and murdered.
As you continue,
The house and barn were abandoned buildings. The killer must have known no one would be there. It was clear he knew the area, and after the crime was cleared, the killer once again returned to the scene of the crime. Items including Dawn's missing earring were found inside the abandoned barn weeks after her murder. University of Michigan student Alice Keeler was next.
She was going to a birthday party at some place called the Depot House.
Someone reported seeing her on the back of a motorcycle leaving the club. After all, it was now June. Perfect weather for a 22-year-old student to take a ride on the back of a bike. If so, it was her last ride.
Her neck was slit from ear to ear. I remember that. She found her out on Territorial Road.
A lonely abandoned barn was nearby. Then, just weeks later, a girl 2,000 miles away was brutally killed. No one could have possibly connected the two at the time. But Roxy Phillips, a 17-year-old senior, was last seen when a shiny cutlass pulled up to the curb, cutting her off. This was in Salinas, California, but the car stood out because it had Michigan license plates.
There were 2 people that saw her in that car.
Roxy Phillips was found beaten and strangled with the floral pattern belt to the outfit she was wearing. She was dumped in a patch of poison oak in Pescarado Canyon, outside of Salinas. Just 10 days after Roxy Phillips' body was found in California, a freshman at Eastern Michigan didn't return to her dorm one night.
Karen Sue Beineman was apparently tortured before her death. It appears that her death by strangulation was a merciful relief from a brutal, sadistic bludgeoning.
Besides being the last person seen with Karen, and living directly across the street from victim Joan Schell, there was more to link John Collins to the murders. The first victim, Mary Flesher, was last seen being cut off by a shiny car just 2 blocks from Collins' room. That car matched one registered to his mother, and it would seem unlikely he didn't know Mary Flesher.
She worked across the hall from where Collins had a student job.
Dawn Basem's house here.
Yes, it is.
And didn't Collins have friends in this apartment complex?
He had several fraternity brothers who rented an apartment there.
Apartments with a clear view of Dawn's house. Then there's Alice Calum, who disappeared after a party in Ann Arbor.
The source that I have said he saw Alice on the back of Collins's motorcycle driving away.
John Norman Collins was arrested on July 31st, 1969.
How's your client bearing up under all of this?
Well, because he was visibly shaken today, I think you've noticed, but generally speaking, he's been quite composed in view of the circumstances.
John Collins grew up in this house in Centerline, north of Detroit. 50 years later, the house is still there. So was the Catholic high school where John Collins was a sports hero, a letterman. His mother told John and his siblings their father had abandoned them, and she worked as a waitress. Now a senior at Eastern Michigan University, studying to be a teacher, he was polite and handsome, but his boy next door image was a facade, something his frat brothers learned the hard way.
He was thrown out because of theft.
In fact, the motorcycle he picked up Karen Beineman on was cobbled together with stolen parts.
Our daughter is gone. She won't come back. But
I knew we had a good case, but I knew it was going to be a lengthy trial. Boy, and here California's got a better case than us, and they got the death penalty.
Collins claimed he never killed anyone. He even agreed to take a polygraph test. Sheriff Harvey says before the test, John met in private with his attorney.
With John for about 45 minutes. He come out and he says, take him back to jail. You mean the polygraph sitting over here? Take him back to jail. Didn't take a scientist to figure out what transpired. I know for a fact that John confessed to him.
Full attention now swings to the first-degree murder trial of John Norman Collins.
In the courtroom, John Norman Collins sat more relaxed than he's ever sat in the courtroom before. He smiled often at his attorneys, at his mother, and at the relatives present.
On August 19th, 1970, a jury found Collins guilty. He was sentenced to life without parole.
Would you classify Collins as a criminal sexual psychopath?
Oh yes, without question, without question.
An individual like this is not someone who on the surface appears to be very peculiar and bizarre. It's someone who might appear rather normal.
I've been looking for a woman to save my life, not to beg or to borrow, a woman with the feeling of losing once or twice. Who knows how it could be tomorrow?
Alright guys, well that's going to wrap up the story segment of this episode. As horrific and sad as that story was, I really hope you guys enjoyed. I try to make it as scary as possible, as always. And again, I'm sorry for this video coming out way late. I got really sick in the middle of this past week, and I'm still like just getting over it. So thank you guys for waiting on this video, and I really wanted to make it the best it possibly could be, so I really just take my time editing and make sure everything is like perfect, because when I look back at it, I want to make sure like it looks good. Little disclaimer, when we went to film these locations, we went to mostly every location, but the wind was so strong that when I was talking in the clips, you could barely understand what I was saying. So I'm just gonna cut right to the paranormal investigation. We head to the abandoned farm where Mary Fleischer's body was found, the first victim of John Collins, and Dawn Basom was found on the same road. We went out to this road because I felt like this road probably has a lot of negative energy just because of those two horrific crimes. And I believe that both of the girls were murdered on the actual road, or off the road. And they weren't just dumped there, they were actually killed there. We got a pretty good spirit box session at the abandoned farm. Another disclaimer, the farmhouse and barn are not there anymore, but the driveway that went into the property is still there, so that's pretty cool. I'll show you guys all that. And yeah, we'll just jump right into the investigation. So let's get into it, guys.
He took her to that abandoned house out on LaForge Road. She was in the basement of that house. And they found glass in her elbows and knees. She had gotten out of there and got across the yard to the back toward the barn, and that's where she was attacked and murdered.
As you continue further north,
What year did you pass away? How old were you when you passed away? What is your name? What is your name? What year did you die? Who murdered Mary Fletcher? How many times were you stabbed? What was that? Is this farm haunted? Does Mary Fletcher haunt this farm?
With me. With me.
What was that, dude? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
With me. Very clear, though. It was slow, wasn't it?
There was something else before that, too.
That was weird. Where are you right now?
He said I'm kinda everywhere.
Did you actually hear that?
Yeah.
Dude, I heard I'm scared, maybe. Some like weird stuff coming through. No. How old were you when you passed away on this farm? Can you speak to me using this device? What's that? Are you on this farm with us? I swear I heard yes ma'am, dude.
Same.
probably lost, dude.
What do we do?
I don't know, that's fucked though. We can't do anything. It's like way too late at night, I feel like. If you called animal control, they just like throw her in a kennel, dude. It's kind of fucked. It probably wants you to go pet it and shit. Dude, it looks like adorable, honestly.
What the hell, dude? Kitty! Kitty! No, wait. Kitty! Should I go towards it? It's probably scared. Are you upset that your life ended this way? Dude, did you hear that? What did it say? I didn't hear. Yes. Oh, wow. Like it was a woman, too. Yeah, I heard the woman.
So I ended up bringing that cat home with me because he seemed like such a nice kitty, and it was raining right before we found him, so I felt really bad. Yeah, he's right here. I've had him for about a month now. He's been an amazing cat. When I took him to the vet said he was 5 pounds underweight, but now he is up to weight, and he has become really comfortable in my home, so it's just really awesome. Really crazy. I mean, who would have ever thought I'd bring a cat home with me from one of these places, but there he is, just chilling right now. You're a good boy. He's such a good boy too. I'm so happy I saved his life. His name is Milo, by the way. Oh, he just yawned. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the Ghost Files, and I'll catch you all next week.
Green-eyed lady, lovely lady, strolling slowly towards the sun.
Full attention now swings to the first-degree murder trial of John Norman Collins.
Getty's Road, which seems now a murder thoroughfare, it leads to most of the places where the bodies have been discovered.
Collins said that I never knew a girl named Karen Sue Beineman. I never took her to my uncle's basement. I never killed Karen Sue Beineman.